Buckle up, friends. We have a good one today. We have invited Ashley Campbell Birnbaum into the tent. Ashley is one of my longest and most cherished friends. We have known each other since we were 13. We are now 33, almost 34. So that's a long time. All the way from high school and high school cheerleading, go Rams. And we went to the same college, lived together. We were in New York around the same time. And we get to hear all about her journey to starting her own business, a little bit about how she got into events, and that has now spurred into her owning her own event company, predominantly focusing on weddings. But she gives so much more than just how she got there. She really dives into how she's built this big, beautiful life for herself and how she thinks about business and parenting and her friendships and her family. And she is just such a gem and a treat for this world. There's a lot in there, some LOL moments about some of our times together, but I think a lot of people will be able to take away such awesome messages from this one because she just has all the goods to offer. So I'm going to get right into it. Without further ado, it's Ashley Campbell Birnbaum. Hi, hello, hey, and welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. Do you need aloe water? Do you need your special
aloe water? Remember that whole saga? My mom used to have it shipped in boxes.
It's all over our house. All righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the tent. Today, we have someone very special to me, one of my most cherished people on this earth, Ashley Campbell Birnbaum. She has been my friend for 20 years, but we're going to get to talk to her today a little bit about her career track, where she is now starting her own business, some motherhood stuff thrown in there, and we both agreed to try not to be weird, but I'm not sure we're going to get through all of this without being complete weirdos. So Ashley, do you want to give a little intro on yourself for the peeps?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm so proud of you. This is the coolest thing ever. And I think you're going to be so great at this because you just, are such a warm, loving personality. And I love just what you've done already with the episodes that you've already dropped. So
I love you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. So, as Sarah mentioned, we have known each other for, 20 years. I am currently living in San Diego with my son. He is 4 months old, so I am a new mom. I'm also a military spouse, so my husband is in the Marine Corps, which brought us out to San Diego. And I just recently launched my own business a couple of years ago. So I work in events, doing mostly weddings, but my background is in corporate events, so still doing a little bit of corporate events, mostly weddings.
We love weddings, and Ashley's own wedding was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Chic queen, has a knack for the details. So now that you have your own business, we'll definitely get into that in more depth as we go. But starting from, it was in college too. I know you did some internships and things like that. Then within graduation, did you always have this passion for events? Did you always sort of like putting together events, things like that? Where did that idea for a potential career path come from?
Yeah. So throwing it back to sorority recruitment, actually.
We love it.
I was the recruitment chair for our sorority. And, it really was like one big event that we sort of had to host. And I was sort of the host as the recruitment chair, and I had to kind of herd the cats, if you will. And you guys were real feral cats.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a challenge, just getting all the girls to focus and teaching everybody really how to be sort of a gracious host within your own home, teaching them talking points, just how the day was going to run, vendors that we would hire because we did, a big bid day celebration. So that was really kind of the start of my passion for events and just realizing I was, maybe sort of good at this. And then in college, I did have an internship that then turned into my first job right out of college. It was with this company that was called MK Events Studio. It was this one woman kind of show. I shouldn't even really say company, but it was, like a small LLC. And my boss, she had been working at People magazine at the time and wanted to start her own business. And so that was a really good start for me because I sort of saw how she created her business. And I really liked that aspect of kind of having my hand in everything. And at that job, we really focused on galas and fundraisers in New York City. And it was a really great first job. It was, fun and glamorous, but also kind of, down and dirty, like I said, with just small business, sort of helping her from every aspect. And so I sort of outgrew that job, and got as far as I could with it. Because again, she was sort of like a one-woman show, and she really taught me, I feel like, everything I knew. And I sort of hit a wall with it and had wanted to move into the city. I remember you were in the city at the time, and a lot of our friends were in the city, and, I was living and working at home. So I took a crazy job at a fashion PR firm.
Wait, I forgot about this. I completely blacked out this entire job.
Same. And it like wrecked me. I mean, it spiritually, emotionally, physically wrecked me. And it sounds like a really fun, fancy job. I mean, it was fashion PR and I was doing events for them. So I was on the special projects team technically, which sort of meant that anything that they didn't really know what team to give to, they gave to us. And if anybody's worked at an agency, you kind of know, you just don't say no to any requests that come through. And adding fashion clients on top of that, it was a wild, wild ride. The hours were very late. Like we would stay until 10 p.m. And even that was early. We worked a lot of fashion week events. So it was a lot of fashion shows, which were amazing. I mean, it was probably like the biggest thrill of my life to work on these fashion shows. Like I've never gone skydiving or done, any crazy drugs or anything like that. But I imagine it was kind of a similar feeling of just like that adrenaline. It was during those fashion weeks, I really only slept. I mean, probably 4 hours a night on average.
And you're a sleeper.
And I'm a sleeper. I love my sleep.
Yes.
I love my sleep. So that job really I had to stop working out because there was just no time in the day for it. I was making nothing. My commute was horrible. I don't know if you remember, and those of you who have lived in New York, if you know, but I had to take basically the L train all the way across town. It was in the Gallery District. So it took me like an hour and 15 minutes to get to work.
Getting across Manhattan is extremely difficult, even though it's a shorter distance than up and down.
Literally.
It is painful.
And I just remember schlepping in the rain and the snow. And so it really sucked my soul, but it taught me a lot. I mean, I dealt with all kinds of crazy. I stayed just a year because that's what you're supposed to do. And then I came crawling back to MK really and worked for her again for another year and a half before I then landed my position at Women's Wear Daily, which is where I stayed for about 6 years. And that job was really a dream job for me. I mean, I was hesitant to go back into fashion, to be honest with you, but an old coworker was working there at the time. And she said, it's a great environment. She loved our boss. She loved the type of work. So I took a chance. And it really, again, was a dream brand for me to work with. I mean, when I was at the fashion PR firm, it was the holy grail. You'd walk into work and everyone would say, did you see what WWD was saying this morning about so-and-so? And so it was a really, really great job for me. For, about 6 years, I started as a manager, worked my way up as director, and then things just started to change. The leadership changed quite a bit. For the 6 years that I was there, I actually had 7 different leadership changes.
Oh my gosh.
Teaching the person above you how to do their job is sort of just demoralizing a little bit and sort of just would really wear me down. It's not really like teaching someone below you how to do something. It's sort of like I'm teaching you how to do your job, but yet you have this job above me.
Yeah.
So that really took a lot out of me. And then my life was just going in another direction. My now husband, boyfriend at the time, had gotten stationed out here in San Diego. And I was fortunate enough to keep my job actually at the time. So I'm very grateful for them letting me do that at the time. But I was going back and forth to New York about twice a month. And I was just getting really tired. We had about 2 events every month, but these were large scale events, conference style events. So, you'd start with a kickoff dinner and then you'd have 2 days of programming and then you'd end with a breakfast, and it was full on. So it wasn't just, 2 events. These were major, major events. So just getting tired. And then COVID hit and I was like, great, I work in events. And I was like,
Awesome.
What's going to happen? I mean, I was just waiting for the email to be like, your entire team is being laid off across brands. So never came. I was shocked. We were able to pivot to virtual events, which, I mean, were just boring. Like, I mean, so boring and not what I was wanting to do at all. And, I had no control over these virtual events where people couldn't get into the room or didn't know how to use Zoom. And it was like, I just kind of sat tight. I had always wanted to potentially own my own business. And it was really just a matter of timing, really. I think I probably would have left prior to the pandemic, but so I stayed probably 2 years longer than I would have had the pandemic not happened. And so we then, I talked over with my husband. It felt obviously like a huge leap of faith to take to go out on my own. But I knew I wanted kids. I knew I wanted my schedule to be a little bit more predictable for me to say no to things. And so I left in 2021 and started my own business. And I decided really to focus on weddings because it was sort of an aspect of the industry I hadn't really worked in yet. I'd obviously done my own wedding and I had helped friends here and there, but it sort of seemed like a new challenge for me and something, that kind of felt fresh. And I was really jaded by the corporate world.
Yeah. And fashion,
really
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I give you so many kudos for lasting as long as you did, because I think you've even said this, the Devil Wears Prada is accurate. It's ruthless.
Yes, it is.
Not a kind sometimes industry to work in. And I feel like weddings are so fitting for you because it's a joyful experience. It's someone that's going to have, hopefully, I mean, I know weddings have gone awry before, but a joyful day. And that is the purpose of that. You're helping them create the vision that they want and the life and the whatever, come to actual fruition. So I feel like weddings are a perfect fit for you, not to mention your own, you went through your own wedding. And so you did have a lot of knowledge. So my question is there any similarities with whether it be back end stuff or the way that things function between a corporate event and a wedding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, skill wise, you have to kind of have the same skills. There's really not a lot of difference, except, to your point, I mean, the reward is so different. Now that I've been doing this a couple of years, and that's exactly why I wanted to transition to weddings, because it's just so much more rewarding and you're giving someone the best day of their life versus kind of like I was doing, to be honest with you, conferences at Women's Wear Daily. It was fun conferences and the content was amazing. And I worked with a lot of amazing designers, but at the end of the day, it was a conference. But, in terms of skill set, it's funny because I do feel like there's a ton of resources out there that I think, they're great. And I did actually take a wedding course before getting into weddings, just even little things about like how to bustle a dress and the different types of bustles and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think you sort of either have a personality for events or you don't. When I was at WWD, I would every now and then interview people for different positions, and there's all these crazy event planning certificates and specialties out there. And I'm sort of like, no offense, but I don't care at all about that. I really care. Are you a good communicator? Do you think quickly on your feet? Are you proactive? Do you assess situations quickly? And can you remain calm under pressure? And are you someone who can deal with 5 people yelling at you basically at once?
All day. Yeah.
That would happen, on site, and mother of the bride and bride, but it's a brand manager and their CEO coming up to you. And sometimes I would even have a line of people asking me questions at an event. And so you just really have to remain calm. And I think that's, one of the biggest things you need. And it's funny because people always say, oh, wow, weddings, that must be really challenging, personalities. And I mean, knock on wood, I have yet to have any bride, any mother of the bride, anyone really give me even an ounce of the type of, freakouts that I would see corporately, because we were working with luxury brands, brand managers who were very picky about the way they wanted things. And the difference really is that the brand managers in a corporate event come to the event maybe an hour early. They see what's going on. They sort of pick everything apart, even though you've already gotten approvals
cleared it
for things. And you got to roll that and you've got to change things because that's what they want. Versus I think with weddings, it's a little bit more controlled and things are really sort of sussed out way prior to.
That's interesting. And I feel like in a lot of ways, fashion has made you like such a bad bitch where you do really stay calm under pressure. And I've gotten to see Ashley actually in action. One of our friends got married, a different Ashley, this past September in Asheville. And you did a lot of the design. Mm-hmm. And I was just watching you buzzing around while pregnant, not to mention, and just running things. You were just teet-totting around, not to mention Ashley is like 5 feet tall and just the tiniest little human, and she's buzzing. And I think that was probably a really good track for you to take because you are used to these really intense people coming at you from all different angles. And now that's really kind of helped you in this career. So with weddings, what are some of your favorite parts about getting to plan weddings? And is there a spin that you kind of take on things as a wedding planner? Is there like a sweet sauce that when someone works with you gets out of the Ashley Campbell experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you, we're very similar in that, one of my favorite parts about weddings is really getting to know the families and learning people's stories and walking away from the wedding feeling like I'm sort of part of the family almost. Like it's sort of my own tent. Learning, about these families and what makes them tick. And it's a really intimate process. You're digging into family dynamics and you see the financial part of it and who's contributing what. And so it's a very delicate sort of dance when you're working with these clients, and everybody's situation is different. And I love learning people's backstories and bringing those things to life. I really try to understand who they are as a couple, what they like to do on the weekends, their hobbies, family traditions, things like that, so that it's a really personal experience for them. And really, I mean, that's the best part of my job, I think, is, once everybody's kind of on the dance floor and the mom's coming up to me, thanking me, and just feeling like I really pulled this off for someone, the ceremony still gives me so much nervousness every single time, even though, I've done this now for quite some time. It's the most special moment, I think, of someone's life, other than having a child. So it's such a special thing that I'm so grateful to be a part of. And I am just always just a little bit nervous before that big moment. In terms of my style, I think there's a lot of noise out there on TikTok and social media of just, oh my God, I mean, I see the tackiest things on these platforms. Here are the 5 things that I would never do as a planner, or here's one thing I did at my wedding that you have to do. And it's like, so I just cringe, at some of these things that are out there. And I think you have to really be careful of who you are listening to. I think you're always saying that too in your industry and in wellness, especially. But I think weddings too. I mean, it's like there are certain formulas for a reason. And yes, I think sometimes it's great to do something that is unique to you and your family, if it makes sense, depending on your family dynamic, or if there's something really fun you want to showcase at your wedding. I think if again, if it makes sense, it's always fun, but let's not try to kind of reinvent the wheel just for reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
I feel like my approach is very like, let's kind of stick to the classic way of doing things, and your style come to life more through the decor and the details and things like that. I really try to stay away from quote unquote trends, because I think you don't want to look back at your wedding in 2 years and be like, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. Well, who knows if that stuff's going to hold up
exactly
in the future. And
right.
I feel like the tasteful add-ons that you personalize, those will never go out of style. Those will always be something that you can still definitely have it be their flair, whether it's a color or a certain flower, you can make that work. But if they were like, I'm going to come out in a Lady Gaga style meat suit, would you be like, yeah? No.
Okay, honestly, I would be like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, that's your personal style. That's amazing and cool. And I love it for you. It's the stuff that's like, I'm going to make my aisle into a runway instead of, and it's like, okay, well then the person in the back is literally like in the back of a row and is 5 miles away from you while you're getting married and can't hear the ceremony. It's stuff like that
logistical,
I'm like,
almost. Yeah.
Do the regular rows, people. But fashion, I'm all about, let's switch it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting that kind of is a differentiator where, and maybe this is wrong. This is what I'm thinking. Like with fashion, every event actually maybe has the opportunity to be a lot more different because people can get really unique and crazy. Where weddings, there seems to, there's kind of formulas behind it, and you're working within like a framework of a wedding, and you make your tweaks and you put your style on it. But I feel like maybe fashion can get a little out of control where they're like, we're going to light you on fire and then you're going to do a backflip.
Yes, exactly. Crazy request. Yep. That you have to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh my God. Within starting your own business, I mean, you did your LLC, you had to start the whole thing up. You're a one-woman show, so you're doing all of this. What were some of your fears before you got started, and how did you get over that fear? Because you have to hit go at a certain point if you want to own something. Even people listening maybe have these desires to want to start their own thing, whether it's a business or a passion. How did you get that gusto to finally say, we're doing it, let's go?
Yeah. I mean, biggest fear, let's be real, making money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Important. On the bush there. That was the biggest fear. Just getting over that, I realized that I had to sort of start with maybe taking projects that I didn't necessarily feel jazzed about. So that's really why I did kind of stay in the corporate world a bit, because for, my weddings, you're working a year out. So I didn't necessarily have the biggest portfolio to build off of for weddings. I mean, I had my portfolio for corporate events, but not really yet for weddings. I knew that work was probably going to be a little bit slower. So I kind of had to just take some projects knowing that, okay, the weddings will come, but for now, I'm just going to stay in the corporate world a bit. But it's funny because the way I approach my business is I'll sort of figure it out. It's funny, like as a planner, everyone thinks you have to be so, and I do, I have a plan A, B, C, D for everything. But to be a successful planner, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to change plans and be okay with it and not get flustered by it. If something happens on site, okay, well, I know we really wanted to do this, but now we've got to pivot and now we're doing this and it's going to be great, but you sort of,
we love it.
A lot of times, you just have to figure it out as you go. And I'm really someone who just believes that and thinks, let's not try to, I don't even think I had like a business plan, which is horrible to say, but I crunched my numbers a little bit, but I was sort of like, I'll figure it out. And I think that's how I've approached my life. Especially as a military spouse, if I tried to plan my life out, I would just drive myself crazy. It's sort of like, we'll just go and figure it out sort of. And I think Oh, I approach my business as well, sort of like an event where you're kind of nervous to get into it, but you know what you know. You got to just trust your gut. You got to trust yourself. And you know that when you get going, when you get on site, things will fall into place the way you have planned them. And if something happens, you can pivot. It's totally fine. And I've always said, like, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back into the corporate world. Like,
Yeah.
Life evolves. Am I going to do this forever? I don't even know. Like, hopefully that'd be great, but
I don't know if anyone knows what they're going to do.
Yeah, right.
Not sure anyone has any idea what's going on at any given time. And you're right. And I do think that you have, it's not like a manifest. Well, I guess it can be considered manifesting, but
oh yeah, I love manifesting.
Yeah, oh yeah, like Mystic McKenna.
We love a woo-woo moment.
Ashley and I talk about witches and spirits, and we're convinced like people are like spirits are haunting us at all times.
Oh yeah.
But you have that, I think, gut feeling and manifestation piece that pushes you forward, where you do know you're putting in the work, you know your value, you know your worth, and you know that it will come, and those things will come your way. And I think you've done a beautiful job of building your portfolio. And I want Ashley to just like manage my entire life, to be honest, but she's kind of busy, so I don't think she can. Not to mention you started a business, and within all of this, you had also recently moved across the country and had a baby. So you just did a bunch of things at the same time, just really casually. And you went into motherhood and owning a business relatively at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did that look for you? And within this, the flexibility piece that you mentioned of wanting a little bit more reliability within your hours, like you had to give yourself mat leave. And how has that shown up, and how has that surprised you sort of with where you come from corporate, where you get a mat leave, it's a little bit more structured. How has that been?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, the maternity leave in the corporate world wasn't really something that I even tried to stick out, because I sort of knew that I couldn't really be pregnant, knowing the mindset I was in. I mean, I was really in that hustle culture, which we now know is so toxic. I mean, it's going to take me like 10 years to deprogram some of the things that, I've really taught myself. I knew that wasn't going to work for me. And I didn't really know what it was going to look like. Like, I just was like, we want a baby. I also want to start my own business. Like, I'm just going to see what happens.
Do it.
And figure it out. Cause like you always do. And I think, of course, you have to have the right mindset and the right foundation for that. So I'm not suggesting anybody just do that without
go rogue
prep. But like, for example, I mean, I had a therapist who said, you shouldn't try to do both at the same time. And I was like, I don't believe you. And I stopped going to her because I just think it is kind of a toxic mentality to think like women can have it all, because we know how much we do as mothers and how much we also want to give to our career. But at the same time, I feel lucky enough that I was in a position where I could just kind of like try it and figure it out. I did have a high risk pregnancy. So my son ended up being growth restricted, which essentially just means that he was under the 10th percentile. So anything under the 10th percentile, they consider growth restricted. And a lot of times they don't know why. I sort of went into my 20-week scan and they had said that he had dropped from the 48th percentile to the 9th. So I was going in for, I mean, Sarah, you remember, like I had 3 doctor's appointments a week.
For a long time.
Almost starting at like 20 something.
Yeah. The entire back half of your pregnancy, I feel like you were.
Yes.
And they were different types of doctors, right?
Yes. So I had to see my regular OBGYN twice a week for a non-stress test, which for those of you that don't know are, it basically just monitors the baby's heart rate to see if they are in distress. And then they would check my amniotic fluid, which is also a sign of distress. And then I would see once a week a high risk doctor that would measure his growth and the blood flow from the placenta. I think back to that time and I'm sort of like, thank God I started my own business, because in the corporate job I was in, there's no way I could. I mean, I think they honestly would have said like, no.
Yeah. Well, it was so time consuming to be going to all these things, not to mention the stress it was putting on you, rightly so. You're doing your best to try to take care of yourself. And pregnancy is an extremely stressful journey, regardless, but it is definitely, I feel like, a blessing. You had more control over your schedule because you were trying to then juggle. It was a full-time job. I mean, another full-time job.
These doctor's appointments. Yes. And yeah, and to your point, it was all I could think about, really. I really did struggle because my very first wedding that I was supposed to do for my full service client was, I think it was actually 2 days after I found out that he was growth restricted. And I mean, if I tell you, like, my mom was like, do not go to this wedding. It was a destination type of wedding. Here's my mom, I'm like in my 30s. And she's like, you said, I'm telling you, you can't go. And I'm like, my mom said no, but it was really important to me that I see this through. I mean, I've been working with this client for a year and I ended up just going, and because I knew that it was going to stress me out more if I didn't go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I traveled with like a pack of my medical records and I had the local hospital there on speed dial. And, I'm really, really glad I went. And, but it was just such a learning experience for me of, okay, these are the things I'm going to have to balance now as a working mother.
It started, I feel like, early, like that almost pushed you into managing the baby. When you have a healthy pregnancy, you're uncomfortable, whatever, but you were really managing motherhood, I feel like, starting from 20 weeks.
Once he was born, which he came a month early, it was an emergency C-section. I am still very traumatized by the whole situation and how it went down. I mean, I'm obviously so grateful he's here and healthy, but it was a really scary experience. Working through that postpartum, it was sort of like an additional layer of having to adjust, and you had a C-section as well. And the recovery for that it's a lot. So
the major surgery. Yeah. That you're awake for.
It's crazy.
That I'll never it was the weirdest hour of my life.
It's insane that we consider this kind of quote unquote normal in our society, that we just lay there while you're being operated and you're
just simply awake.
And you can hear them talking in code. And
well, I mean, I know you had a pretty chaotic, traumatic event. So they were I feel like they were really rushing, and not rushing to cut you open. Yes, rushing to cut you open. And wasn't John just like chilling and they finally found him and he ran down the hallway at full speed?
Yes. So part of the reason why this was sort of traumatic was, they determined the baby was in distress.
Yeah.
And in that case, they really don't care and give a shit about you. And, I'm like screaming and crying. I'm like, I'm scared. And, my husband they take the husbands to go get scrubbed up. And they needed the baby out. So they sort of started before my husband was in the room, and basically told him to run down the hallway. So it was kind of traumatic for him as well. But that being said, like the recovery and the maternity leave, going back to that was really hard, because when you own your own business, their wedding day, I mean, to them, this is as important as giving birth to their child. They don't, they haven't gone through that experience maybe yet, or maybe they have, but it's one of the biggest moments of their lives. And so they're nervous and stressed too. And so I picked things up 4 weeks after giving birth. Luckily, my husband did have some paternity leave, but he's also in the process of studying for the LSATs. So,
of course he is.
So it was sort of like, I'll take 3 hours to work on my business, and then we'll switch, and then you take 3 hours to study. And so it was just really hard. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I have for business owners is just to try to get help when you can and sort of compartmentalize, because the worst thing for me was trying to focus on giving my son attention and care, but also I'd be like feeding him, but also trying to answer emails at the same time, and feeling guilty that I wasn't totally focused on him. And we did start a nanny a couple weeks ago, and it's been such a lifesaver because I can compartmentalize now. And when I'm at work, I focus. And then when I come home, I focus. So I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice for anybody doing this is just try to really give the baby the undivided attention, and then give your business undivided attention as well. And don't try to mix the two.
I think that's where sometimes you I think said it earlier, this society thing that women can do it all. Women can do it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, we can do a lot, but we can't do that much. Like, oh my God, like you have to be able, you can't like literally have two thoughts at once. Like John needs X, Y, and Z in a bottle, and I'm trying to answer this email from a client that needs this urgently. Like it's just not possible. And a lot of people talk about the village behind them. I know you have your village with your husband and your family and your nanny, and that's so important because we can't. So I'm fine with saying we can't do it all. I can't.
Totally.
Like, I would literally will lose my mind if we didn't have daycare or whatever for my son. I mean, he's been home 800 times because he's been sick, but trying to do anything because he's like catapulting head first into the cabinet. I'm like, great, you're going to get a concussion because I'm trying to answer this person on ping. I'm totally fine with saying we need help.
Yeah. And I think too, I personally sort of naturally fell into like the homemaker, role, even when we just moved in together for the first time, just because I was working from home. So it was like, in between calls, I can do the laundry. Like, don't worry about it. I'm fine to do the dishes. And it just works for us that way. But now it's funny because, and especially with the C-section, my husband really stepped up in a lot of ways, just those little things, making dinner, things like that. And I'm also like, I'm fine if the laundry is piled up. Like, I can't care. I just can't.
There's no time.
You can't. No, you really need to just protect your peace a little bit with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, perspective shifts so much once especially when parenthood comes into the mix, where I definitely used to think it was the end of the world if there's been laundry sitting over there for like a week and a half. Just haven't done anything with it. The perspective rapidly changes over what matters and what doesn't. And we've talked about this. I think we have very similar airs of like family is important right now. Like that is the priority. Our kids won't always be at home. I mean, my mom's an empty nester now, and we'll be home for like 3 days, and she's like, "Get out of my house. I want my house back."
Yes,
it won't always
I like
be that
to take
way.
the perspective of someone told me this once of pretend like you are yourself in the future, and you were able to time travel back to this one day where you're able to have your son home and feed him and play with him. And I really try to take that mindset of, I'm going to miss this. So even though he's up at 3 a.m. wanting a bottle, it's a privilege to be able to be here with him, feeding him.
I know. And it's so wild. I mean, we were texting the other day. I was like, who gave us permission to be this responsible? Especially because we've known each other for so long. And I feel like we can maybe, give some of the background of just all the phases that we've known each other in life. But in my opinion, it's been so beautiful to watch you evolve in this because you've always had that core caregiver by nature. So you were saying what works for you is even as you were just dating John and living together, that was your nature is to care. That's always been who you are though. Like even as 13-year-olds, when we would be making cheerleading posters, you would be such a great host, which actually now makes sense to event planning because you've always loved to be a little host. And you've always been such a caregiver by nature to all of your friends and the people that you love. So I feel like that's always been the same. But Ashley and I've had some times.
We really have. I mean, our college phase, really, I think our after college phase was, for me at least, the most out of control. I think back to those days. Really, when I was at the fashion PR firm, just killing my soul. Dark days.
What was his name? That like French guy. Remy. He was always just bopping around. Yeah. Right after college, we lived, and this is why sometimes I'm like, oh my God, we're parents. This is terrifying because I still feel like I'm 21 sometimes, but I lived in the well, let's be honest. I lived in Chinatown. Okay. Let's just be real. I tried to say I lived in the Lower East Side.
Told everyone you lived in Soho, who was I to correct you?
No, we lived in a 400 square foot apartment in Chinatown, which was great. But we would troll the Lower East Side until 4 a.m. and
we would
just like get real, like, I go to bed at 8 o'clock now on the dot, but
I think everyone needs that phase in their life too, though.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't take it back for anything because I feel like it kind of got out of my system and really, set us up for success, just like having that sort of like behind us. I don't know. I think that everyone needs that phase.
I always say I did New York young.
Me too.
We did it when we really didn't care about where we lived or what we ate because we had no money. We literally had no money.
Yeah. We left it all on the table. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
We left it all on the table. We gave it everything we had.
And then we pieced out. We were like, goodbye.
Yes, we did.
I must leave. I must depart. Oh my God. Yeah. And I think if you're young and listening to this, bless you first off, because I'm like an old woman now, but have fun while you're young. My little brother's here right now and he's just been driving across the country with his dog, which has been like so cool. And I love that because there's
so true.
There's going to be time to do everything. Cause obviously like now it's so hard to even leave the house for an hour without 17 bags. And we used to just like I don't even know what we used to do. Go to the DL.
We had a lot of fun. I will say, I think that that's really key. Like I think do all the things, travel, because I think too often this like hustle culture gets us scared. And I do think the younger generation probably is a little bit more tuned into this than we are, just, protecting their peace a little bit. But I think we were really just fed that like hustle culture mentality. And I think, again, like going back to this, like you'll always figure it out sort of thing. And I think those life experiences are so important and makes you a more well-rounded person overall. Don't get so caught up in this corporate thing. Like I found out, I think I told you this after I left, that someone below me was making significantly more than I was. And they asked me to even manage this person at one point.
Oh my God.
And I declined because I wasn't offered more. That's one of my biggest takeaways too, just owning your own business and corporate, that corporate culture, it's like you're not married to your job. Like your job is very transactional. It's not, you don't really owe them anything. And
they don't owe you anything.
And they don't owe you. And it's like, we all know this, but I really did have to learn it the hard way of, wow. That was a huge wake up call for me to be like, I unfortunately stayed too long because I loved the brand. And I was just, I guess, grandfathered in at a lower salary, but
that's still fucked up though.
I was raging that.
And that's also a good point to, as you should have been.
Yeah.
I would have I don't even know, but that's a good point too for this corporate thing. Like, don't be afraid to do something different. And you are right. Maybe the generation below us has a little bit more, they're maybe a little bit more apt to want to do something that's different. But I feel like we were so taught, especially like where we grew up, it's like you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, you start a family, you have kids. Like that is sort of the talk track. But I'm hoping that the conversation is changing because also like college might not be for everyone. Or professions, like going into corporate is not for everyone.
No.
Maybe it is owning your own thing or doing your own thing.
Totally. You don't need a college degree to do what I do. Absolutely not. I think, again, like I really think it's a personality thing.
Yeah.
And of course you have to be extremely organized and very articulate with just communicating and I guess just understanding people's sort of like thoughts and just being sort of like socially smart, I think more than book smart.
And some people are book smart and that's great.
And that's great. That's totally great.
Duke obviously is like doing calculus in his head and then I'm running around like a psychopath. And then John is just getting a law degree.
And then my husband, who started in finance on Wall Street when I met him, That was quite the surprise to me.
You got a crazy, but that actually goes to your personality too. Where you're like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Okay. I mean, exactly. We'll figure it out. We can adapt.
Yeah. We are more adaptable than we think.
It's true. It's very true. And I think being adaptable is just in events, like a totally key thing that you need just to be able to roll with the punches.
Oh my gosh. All right. I have some rapid fire questions.
Okay. That's fun.
If you could tell your 21-year-old self anything, what would it be?
Oh gosh. I know you prompted me with this, but I would say, don't get so caught up in the corporate grind. Just you'll figure it out. Like, just don't get so, and it's so easy to say, don't worry, don't stress, but don't stress.
Don't stress out. Don't worry, be happy.
Don't stress out because it's all going to work out.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
If you could live one place anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, in the world?
Yes.
I mean,
the world.
The world. I mean, honestly, I probably would say outside of New York. I mean, my husband's from New York City. This is such a mom answer because now that we have kids, I want to be close to my parents.
I'm like in my mom's house.
It's kind of like a boring answer. So, if my parents could come with us and we would like have guaranteed jobs and everything. I
love how practical this answer.
I know. Well, I want to give you something fun. Napa or Sonoma. So fun.
Done. And
so chic, like Nancy Meyers, wine, good outfits.
Yes.
All those things.
All right. And final question. And we have to do a little bit of backstory on this. Ashley and I lived together our sophomore year of college in this cute little apartment where we only ate Special K and anything that you could put on a George Foreman. That's like the only appliance we had that worked. What was your favorite George Foreman creation from Sheridan 21 in 2013?
Oh, okay. So this is a tie between peanut butter and jelly with honey and bananas.
Yeah.
If you want sweet, and then a savory option would be a grilled cheese with pickles.
On the George Foreman?
On the George Foreman grilled.
And it would be like 3 a.m. and we'd just be firing up the George Foreman grill.
People knew, like they would come over for these sandwiches.
And it was all we ate. Special K twice a day and George Foreman sandwiches.
Yes. And our Sonic runs, your Sonic runs.
Okay. Why do we have to go there? The people at Sonic knew my name because I went so frequently. They said,
"Hi, Sarah." Maisie, right? Wasn't her name Maisie?
Yes, and then my car would pull up and she'd be like, "What up, girl?" Oh my God. Look at us now. Look at what we've done for ourselves. Oh my gosh, my queen. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us all the dirty deets on your life, and obviously just being one of the people I love the most in this entire world.
Well, thanks for having me. And I am so proud of you for this. This is so cool. And I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Oh my gosh. I'm tagging Ashley in the show notes. I'll tag her accounts, her website. If you want to check her out, she is a planner extraordinaire. If you're getting married,
yes,
she's your girl. She's your girl. She will fix all your problems like she fixes mine. Okay, my love. Thank you for being in the tent. I love you.
I love you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.